Daenerys deciding to burn everything down because the sound of bells drove her crazy was fucking stupid, but let's talk about one more reason why it's stupid, and that has to do with the Battle of the Bells and Jon Connington over here. And if anyone has the urge to say, oh, why do you still care? Why do you care that I care? Don't you have a woman to go talk at or some soap to not wash your ass with? Scroll, bitch! Now, I've talked about before how the ending of the show is trying to head towards some version of George's ending, but to get there, they have to kind of mix some things up. They have to fill in some gaps that they created when they cut certain characters. One of the big ones being Jon Connington over here. Jon Connington has a whole subplot to do with a character named Young Griff, who is purportedly Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar and Elia Martell, and who would be the most prominent Targaryen heir to the throne. Jon Connington was Rhaegar Targaryen's friend, and therefore he has been, taking care of this smuggled out child in secret. So don't forget, it's like 3 days till this app might once again go away, so here and other places, links in places, you get it. Now, the show cut him and they cut young Griff, but they still kept elements of the storyline intact. Jon Connington, in the books, so spoilers, at one point secretly contracts grayscale. Grayscale, remember, turns you into like a stone man, but he's hiding it at the moment. So in the TV show, that whole subplot gets given to Jorah, who doesn't have that happen to him in the books. But another very important plot point and character detail about Jon Connington is his aversion to the sound of bells and how the sound of bells makes him go kind of crazy. Why is this important to point out? Well, because towards the end of the show, we have another character who suddenly, randomly, perplexingly, gets set off and triggered by the sound of bells and then decides, ooh, I'm gonna kill everyone! Ah! Fucking hell! It's fine, everything's fine. It's not, it's a dumpster fire, all of it, the whole fucking world, but whatever, we're here, yay, fun, dragon! Now, my point being that since they had to give a lot of the storylines that are pertinent towards the ending to other characters, I think a very big candidate for that action is the fact that Jon Connington, with his, rage-inducing, triggering nature with bells, gets kind of handed off to Daenerys. Now, I think that means that there's a very good chance that the whole destruction of King's Landing doesn't quite go down the way that it does in the show, that Daenerys, might be involved, but maybe, might not be the perpetrator, we don't know. At the very least, we do know that her trigger, the thing that sets her off in the TV show, is something that is associated very much so with a very different character who is also going to King's Landing and might, accidentally destroy it. Because that's something you need to know about Jon Connington. So Jon Connington, his plot, like I said, is he has been taking care of the young, purported Aegon Targaryen in secret. And right now, they are on the march towards King's Landing. They are doing a whole invasion of Westeros, and they're doing a pretty good job. They've taken out a bunch of pretty big castles, and they're now probably going to be heading towards King's Landing with the intent of taking it over because, they want to put young Griff on the throne. But the problem here is that Jon Connington over here is young Griff's, right-hand man. He's the guy who raised him, and so naturally he's going to be his, hand of the king. A position that Jon Connington actually did before for the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, back in the day. Now, I'm going to ask you with the logic in your head that I know you can access. Let's think real quick. We know that Jon Connington is with Aegon, and they are marching towards King's Landing with the intent of taking it. And as this is happening, Jon Connington has grayscale that he is concealing and has been doing so for weeks and weeks and probably months at this point. And one of the big side effects of grayscale is that it makes you slowly go crazy. You lose touch with reality. You become more and more violent until you are like an out of your mind, stone man who wants to just attack and viciously maim people. Now, if the hand of the king to the guy who's marching to King's Landing is and trying to, militarily take it over, is slowly losing his mind and also has a well-known trigger for the sound of bells, and we know that King's Landing at some point is probably going to be destroyed, can we put two and two together? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, maybe Daenerys is somehow involved in this, sure, whatever, but at the very least, I think we can agree that the elements that lead to her doing this, well, they kind of exist in this guy who was a cut character. But why does he have this aversion to the sound of bells? Well, let me explain. It has to do with the Battle of the Bells. So, when he was Hand of the King to Aerys Targaryen, he was very young. So he was probably way too young to be Hand of the King, but he was one of Rhaegar's, like, besties. And at the time, it was like, okay, we need some, like, Targaryen loyalists up in this bitch. Because Robert's Rebellion was, like, starting to get into the full swing of things. And so there had been a couple of battles already, and Randall Tarley had just beaten Robert Baratheon and kind of, like, chased him up north a little bit. Not all the way, but, like, towards the Riverlands. And Jon Connington, being like the cocky young lord, said, okay, I'm going to squash this right here, right there. We're done. I'm going to chase Robert Baratheon up to the Stony Sept, which is like the town that he was hiding in, and we're going to take him out. We're going to end this now. The problem, though, is that he gets there with his army, and they can't find Robert Baratheon. Robert Baratheon is being hidden by the people of the town. They're smuggling him from house to house as the army is like searching and like going through the streets and trying to figure out where the fuck he is. Robert was kind of injured in the last battle, and so he's just like not at 100%. So people are like actively trying to protect him here. And Jon Connington is threatening people. He's trying to compel them, like, hey, like, I am going to fuck you up if you do not help me here. Please, where the fuck is this guy? And no one will help him. And then as he's getting very frustrated, Ned Stark with his own army shows up as backup, and the Battle of the Bells is in full swing. Now, why is it called the Battle of the Bells? Well, when all of these armies are like, you know, deciding to make this town their fucking battleground, the people in the Sept is like a church, start ringing all of the bells to basically warn the townspeople to stay inside because it's not safe. And so as this battle is raging in the streets and the alleys and everything, there are bells just banging over and over and over again throughout the whole damn thing. Now, eventually, Robert Baratheon would pop out of the brothel that he was hiding in, try to take out Jon Connington, kill a few guys, and then, you know, they would disperse. Jon Connington, with his tail between his legs, retreats, realizes he's lost, heads back to King's Landing, where he is promptly stripped of his titles, his position as Hand of the King, and exiled from the kingdom by the Mad King. Which is why Jon Connington is in Essos when he is eventually told that Rhaegar's son, little Aegon Targaryen, was smuggled, and he gets to take care of him now. Now, I mentioned earlier that Jon Connington is triggered by the sound of bells, and I am not just saying that, it says this in the text. Last night he dreamt of the Stony Sept again. Alone with sword in hand, he ran from house to house, smashing down doors, racing upstairs, leaping from roof to roof, as ears rang to the sound of distant bells. Deep bronze booms and silver chiming pounded through his skull, a maddening cacophony that grew ever louder until it seemed as if his head would explode. 17 years had come and gone since the Battle of the Bells, yet the sound of bells ringing still tied knots in his guts. Others might claim that the realm was lost when Prince Rhaegar fell to Robert's warhammer on the Trident, but the Battle of the Trident would never have been fought if the griffin had only slain the stag there in the Stony Sept. The bells tolled for all of us that day, for Aerys and his queen, for Elia of Dorne and her little daughter, for every true man and honest woman in the Seven Kingdoms, and for my Silver Prince. Also, Jon Connington was really gay for Rhaegar. It's fun. Here we are. Jon Connington has a well-known trigger in the sound of bells, a sound that still ties knots in his stomach and reminds him of all the failures and all the consequences that have come from that failure back in the day. We have him infected with grayscale and slowly losing his mind as he doesn't tell anyone because he wants to see through his mission. He wants to seat the son of his friend and, you know, love interest back on the throne that he feels that he lost him. Now, I don't know if it'll be on the initial march to King's Landing. I don't know if it'll be after, you know, young Griff has taken the throne and then Daenerys shows up. But at some point, we know that the sound of bells is probably going to happen and it's going to trigger someone. And just looking at the narrative, who has been set up to be triggered by that? You tell me. Okay, good night, y'all.